Hello, everyone. Welcome to Arash's World. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Amy Albright. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing fantastic. So fun to be on with you.
Wonderful. And so, how would you briefly describe yourself? And this is probably the toughest question to get started with.
That's a big question to start with. Um, I exist inside of kind of a world of dichotomies because I am an academic and quite nerdy and love science, but I'm also deeply mystical and basically live in constant communion with the unseen world. And so that's the way that I've lived, and that's the way that I've worked. I've been on a spiritual path for 32 years. So, what this means is that I've had time to embody it. I've had time to understand that we can't possibly understand. And I live deeply inside of the adventure of learning and creating more scientific discoveries, whilst also knowing that there's no way for us to possibly conceive of what it is to be human or what one person is, like that timeless soul on an endless journey. So I explore in all of those ways, in my even in my professional endeavors, I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, and honestly, I'm really good at the work of being someone's doctor. But I also have helped people to reorganize or scale companies in the multi-billions to trillions of dollars in valuation, and can be placed into any container or environment and find answers and solutions to things. So whether that's an individual's health, whether that's their quest for something that they're looking for to deeply fulfill them in their lives, whether that's a business solution that wants to be had, or it could also be an environmental or community issue, which is also one of my favorite things to do. I spend a lot of my focus in my lens of, well, I'd say even the predominant focus is how do we create a better world? How do we protect Mother Earth? How do we reinvent things in society that are wanting to be reinvented? And so I feel like that a lot of the world is just in many ways catching up to this in a deeper way. And I'm so thrilled and excited to be engaged with folks in projects and in conversations. And really, those are the folks that we help with my organization, Holon. We're looking for those game changers, the people that are wanting to be a part of creating a new definition for what it is to be human, a new definition for how we live here on Earth, creating a new way of living. And so that's who I'm most passionate about serving. That's the lens through which I see it. And I'm looking for the biggest leverages that I can find, both in the energetic realm and with people. And I recognize that science gives us incredible tools, but I also know that we must quest far beyond what science or what even the mind can comprehend in order to really solve all of this. Because essentially, where we're at right now is how do we come maybe one way of looking at it is how do we come into unity? How do we come into the embodied understanding that we are all one and that we can't solve just for humans or just for these people, but not for those people, and not even just for people versus planet, species, other species, water, everything. How do we solve for all of it? And this requires a higher level of intellectual focus, but it also requires a different sort of emotional and energetic focus and intelligences. So this is a very perhaps long answer to how it is that I frame myself, because it doesn't, yes, I'm also a mother, and I'm also, the place that the home that the family comes to at the holidays. Like we all are so many things. But I would say maybe if I were to sum all of that up, it's something like adventure, explorer, mystic,
Mhm.
nerd, a lot of things all at once.
I
Yeah.
love all of those things. Yeah.
Oh,
So
thank
well
you.
put, well said. And so, and I also like the idea of like bringing the ancient with the modern and like not
Mhm.
choosing just one. This is truly holistic in my view, where you're like embracing all the good that is out there. And so and not attacking technology because there are lots of benefits to it, but also not solely relying on it because then we leave the spiritual aspects as well. So I just love how you're combining all of these things together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at how does nature interact or how does it move? It's so many things all at once. So
Mhm.
if we become very reductionistic in the way that we're operating internally or as a group, as a collective, we're looking at in species extinction or having to reinvent itself, which is, I think, sort of some of this, maybe it's a reinventing of ourselves that we're looking at right here. Hopefully we don't tip over the scales towards extinction, but it'll be interesting to see how it all flows, right? But if we look at how nature thrives and what really works, then we have to take into account all of it. And I don't think that there is we can't eliminate the utilization of things like AI, or in our practice we're also working with the electrical information from the brain at high levels of intricacy,
Mhm.
studied via an EEG and then fed back to the brain via neurofeedback therapy. This is as nerdy as it gets. This isn't
Mhm.
lightweight equipment. This is the most advanced hardware and software in the world. Most of what people think of for neurofeedback therapy, if they've ever even heard of it, are these rudimentary devices that people can take very minimal amounts of training to be able to utilize, but it doesn't necessarily work because it's rudimentary. So, we're using these extremely advanced technology devices, but we're,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely, with understanding we're a timeless soul on an endless journey, you and I and the listener
Mhm.
here with
Mhm.
us. And how do we understand infinite? And how do we understand reincarnation? How do we understand karma? How do we understand what is consciousness or awareness? And how does our perceptual lens, how does the aperture or the camera lens with which we are focused change everything? Right?
Mhm.
Are we looking at the perspective as though we are an ant and everything is giant? Or are we able to zoom out and be able to understand life and who we are and what's really happening here from a much broader view? And maybe most importantly, zooming in and zooming out.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
that science can often be a very zoomed in perspective,
Yes, it is very much so.
right? It's very much like in the petri dish, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then when we really learn how to convert that knowledge into wisdom, that's
Mhm.
that zoomed out perspective.
Mhm.
How is the analysis of all of these smaller units of information coming together, even if
Mhm.
it seems to not be matching?
Mhm. So Abby is the CEO and co-founder of Holon, and so let's talk about that. And that brings in the technology and then the neurofeedback that you're talking about. What is it that you do? What is what is it all about here with Holon?
Yeah. So Holon it's a funny word. Most people are like,
Mhm.
why'd you pick that word? Well,
Yeah.
it's based on the word, it's the same as like hologram,
Yes.
right? So it's understanding the interconnectedness of all things and that we are a representation of something much bigger and that we are also made up of smaller parts, but our real interconnectedness. So I would say that the purpose of Holon is to help people to have an embodied experience
Hmm.
of the interconnectedness, because thinking of it on a philosophical level doesn't actually change. It doesn't change our root behavior. It doesn't change how we're behaving when we're under stress.
And that's exactly it. We know the answers. We know what we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do, but still
Yeah,
we don't do it often. And we have
right,
intellectual
exactly.
grasp of it, but why is it not translating? And exactly embodiment is so important for that, that it becomes part of our DNA in a sense of like,
Yeah.
this is
It's
how we
so that
react to things. Yeah.
yeah, so that spirituality isn't just a pie slice within the wheel, right? Like you
Yeah.
remember that kind of personal
Yeah.
development theory?
Uh-huh.
So
Sure.
reductionistic, right? It's like
Yeah.
here's family and here's spirituality and here's money and it's like
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's helpful in some regards, but it's a very limited frame and it's making our spiritual connection, our sense of integrity, our sense of truth, our sense of what is sacred, cordoned off to a small thing. And so a
Mhm.
lot of the times, like the folks that I'm working with are I've built this organization as much as I know to within basic integrity, but now I'm wanting to bring it down into deep integrity where
Mhm.
the teammates and all of the stakeholders are feeling deep value and we're working inside of more of regenerative understanding. So being
Mhm.
able to help people, again, the with what Holon is doing, being able to help people bring their belief structures into an integrated way of being so that it's not just the intellectual, but it's how they operate when they're making financial decisions, when they're making decisions about, family, about the way that they're living, so that they can feel in integrity. They can feel aligned to themselves, aligned to their mission for what they incarnated for, and aligned to greater good.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people have a huge amount of friction, whether they can consciously talk about it or not, where those things become misaligned,
Mhm.
right? It's a lot of pain for people. And then they often feel like there's this existential pain, which is quite huge. Like what all is going on in the world right now can be quite overwhelming. So how do I make enough of a difference? How much difference can I make? And also, how do I feel safe in the present moment, right? How do I know I'm enough
mhm.
as I am right here, right now?
And in today's world, we're overstimulated. There is like we're an overdrive. We want to like. There's always this. I had my previous podcast was about overperforming and so on. So
Hmm.
it's like that state that we find ourselves in, and which is kind of also then controlled by our brain, and a lot of it we don't realize. But then with the neurofeedback, you can find out what you're doing and how you can
Right.
change that, right? How you can get to a different point that is not over, that is more like the just right kind of
That's right.
Goldilocks zone that he can get.
That's right. I love that, Arash. That's such a beautiful point. Overperforming. So what we've been taught, what we've been conditioned to believe is that we should push, drive, go. We're on our own. It's every person for themselves. It's a dog eat dog world. We have all
Mhm,
of these things. And also there's a fundamental, and I've seen this no matter how many billions of dollars of net wealth someone has, there's a fundamental thing about not good enough,
mhm.
not doing
Yeah,
enough,
yeah.
not lovable, those kind of things, right? So how do we find the way? Because I think that for peak performers, I think for the modern person, we all have that feeling of like, well, what's really true? Like, it seems that if we just, meditate and think happy thoughts and whatever, maybe that's not enough, right? But some of the traditions or some of the kind of like smaller communities and things like that seem to be pointing in the direction of just use your happy thoughts, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Be a happy person and use your happy thoughts, and that's enough. But it seems like the world is moving much faster than maybe when
Yeah.
some of these theories or these foundational pieces got put into place. So when we look at the brain, this is where we then say, okay, so we're going to take this massive philosophy about non-attachment, maybe it is, or maybe, the philosophies of how we approach our life, whatever the names that we want to call it, and we're going to see how our brain is actually functioning.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because if we are in overdrive neurologically, it's extremely apparent. And there's not just one way that stress presents itself in the brain, but essentially the brain can be wasting up to 30% of its horsepower on an electrical level. We're talking about wattage,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
On nothing,
mhm. Yes.
on non-productive,
Yes.
right? But it
Yeah.
looks like everything because people are going, going, going. And in fact, some of the hardest drivers, the CEOs that are in startups often, or people who are under extreme stress to be able to hold and trying to drive something forward, are often on the road for burnout. And we can see it in their brain 4 or 5 years before they hit that max, where
Mhm,
then it's like they throw their hands up in the air and they can no longer do the thing, right?
mhm,
So it can look like somebody can go from that overdrive that it looks like they're a peak performer. It looks like they're doing all of what society is asking them to do. However, we can see it in their neurology. It's not sustainable and it's not being done in the right way.
mhm,
So we can dance then inside of this conversation and inside of the finding of the way um, of how to have somebody perform with the greatest amount of leverage, not the necessarily the greatest amount of busyness,
mhm,
right? It's
mhm,
kind of that one thing theory that's out there. Like how do we do the things that really matter and maybe just do so many less things, but do the things that matter the most, right? That
mhm.
maybe earn the most money for the time, produce the biggest leverage for the greater good, or in many cases, maybe we can also focus on knowing how to relax and recover. Because a
Yes.
lot of people are not taking time for that. They don't
That's
understand
what I
that's
wanted
actually
to
a
talk about.
physiological need.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because with the body, it's kind of like more obvious. Like a marathon, okay, I can't run anymore. And you know the
Yeah.
body needs rest. But the mind, we keep going past
Right.
beyond that. And so
Right.
I like the analogy of a personal trainer that you give, that you will have your personal trainer as you're preparing with the feedback that you're getting, neurofeedback and so on, because that is something that people understand, like having your personal
That's
trainer
right.
who makes sure that you're doing well and you're getting enough rest and your muscles are building up correctly and so on. And the same with the brain, because that's a muscle too.
Right. It is. It's a great analogy, and I love that. Obviously, the brain doesn't have any muscles in it, but it works a lot the same. And we
Yes.
can get it stronger in very specific and unique and highly specified ways so
Mhm,
that people have a huge difference in how they experience reality, how they experience themselves,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
they think of themselves as a person who is reactive or has gaps in memory, like they forget people's names or they,
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
um, they're always on the go, go, go. And so if we were to then take this through the lens spirituality, we might say these are aspects of the personality, right?
Hmm.
And then the
Yeah.
overachiever subconsciously might be like, yeah, whatever, that's just who I am, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So then when we balance the brain, what we see, and because we look over into the brain side and we see that they're pushing on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. And
Yes.
they're wasting a lot of
Yeah.
revolutions just
Oh, yeah.
sitting in place or not making great progress. And so we can rebalance how that is working with high levels of specificity. And then what we watch is suddenly so much more leverage. The revenue goes up. The feeling about life goes, through the roof. The ability to connect to themselves and their loved ones goes much higher. And they're living from a place of wisdom.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're living place from a place of fulfillment, right?
Hmm.
And so it's not just this philosophical kind of like net of thought about
Hmm.
it. It's actually watching how their experience is as we change the brain and then watch how they flourish. So not all of our programs involve the brain, but when we do work with people's brains directly, it's incredible what we get. Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of the neural networks and so on, I like the computer also analogy, like a computer processor. And so, as you're saying, like we have a certain amount of energy, and but something is zapping, taking it away, which I find stress and anxiety does reduce your capacity there of actually performing and being successful, and just being tired, for example. Because once you take
Yeah,
away that element, and from my own experience, I feel I have much more energy. It's like this hidden thing that this app that's kind of hidden that's taking away all your
that's
energy
right.
and so on. But once you like whether with psychoanalysis you kind of turn this into like consciousness or with your efforts, then you learn how to deal with that. And once that's out of the picture, you have so much more time, energy, less worries, and so on.
Totally. And so many people that have that app running in the background don't
Uh-huh.
even consider themselves to be a worrier. They don't
Yes.
even know, because what's amazing about consciousness or the human experience is that we only know what it is to be ourselves.
Hmm. That's right.
And so there's this vast set of experiences and dimension that exist, that are available, that exist beyond where we are, no matter how we are, no matter how evolved we are, no matter how long we've been on the journey, no matter whether we've had our brain work done or not, right?
Hmm.
It's like there's always more, more beauty, more wisdom, more bliss, more joy, more capacity, more ease. And we don't necessarily know it or believe it to be true. So one of the favorite things that I love to do within Holon is bring people to that capacity, regardless of whether, again, whether they do the brain work or not, um, because uh, it's a true liberation,
Hmm.
right? People will talk about freedom, and they often mean like financial freedom or time freedom, but ultimately they are often still working inside of a constricted or imprisoned sense of self or what is
Hmm.
possible in reality.
Hmm.
It's like saying, well, I have 3 more hours of playtime each week, and that's awesome. And I want to celebrate that. I don't mean to not celebrate it,
Hmm.
but just talking about it on another paradigm, what's it like to no longer be imprisoned to the idea structure of who you think you are and to slip into the bigger, truer version of who you think you are, or the bigger and truer version of what freedom feels like as it courses through your body.
But we also have a very simplified perspective of things. It's like this on and on switch, like now working, now it's off, and so on, and not seeing the connection between that. What you're doing at work affects your family life, and what you do for your family life affects your work. And again, the holistic view, it's like this is all interconnected. How you deal with your money is also like shows your personality as well, and certain issues that you're having when you're greedy or you're stingy and so on. That actually shows me that there's something off. And so
Yeah,
finding
totally.
like once you fix like this part, big part, everything kind of falls into in line and into place, I think. And that's
Yeah.
such an wonderful experience, an awareness that changes everything in a sense.
Yeah, totally. If somebody's driven by fear underneath the surface, even
Mhm.
if it looks like they're a kind person and they're doing good things in the world,
Yes,
but if the
yes.
driver is fear, then they can often
Yeah.
come from that place
Mhm.
of kind of contracture or scarcity, and they can
Mhm.
make decisions financially from fear. And that same fear and contracture is the same one that has them snap at their spouse
Yeah.
or not know how to bond with their kids, really, like really be present, right?
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
we get to the root cause of the root cause, we often are, I love to solve things in exponents, right? Like
Hmm.
why go for incrementals when we can go for the big stuff?
Okay,
And
good.
so
Yeah.
getting through some of these breakthroughs and seeing things that we can't see on our own and really resolving them on a neurological, emotional, energetic level. Wow, it's life is different.
Hmm.
People are transformed, and it's difficult to quantify the reach that it has. Sometimes just one area of transformation underneath goes
Yeah.
into every area of life as a big, yeah, a big freedom, as a big joy
Yeah.
and bliss, like coming through, like, wow. Most people are
And
aiming to be
it's
fine, and they're like,
yeah.
whoa, this is amazing all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the spiritual part of it. I mean, the scarcity too. I mean, that was something in mind view. I had like, okay, my son wanted to go on a trip, which was very expensive. And I said, how am I going to pay for it? It's like, I said, no, I'm just going to do it because he wants it. And then I got unexpected contract that filled
That's right.
exactly that cost. So it's like the limited perspective that we have. And once we open up to like another one of
Hmm.
abundance, and again,
Hmm.
karma is an important point too, because once you change that perspective, good things come out of it. And so instead of
Right.
getting stuck in that limited view, it's like, no, we can't afford it, or we can't do this, or this won't
Right.
happen. And then we limit ourselves, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that most people have very limited beliefs about who they are and what's possible.
And based
And
on
I love
fear,
to
right?
challenge that,
Yes,
right? Like
that's based on
it
fear.
it
Yeah,
is based on fear, and
yeah.
it's based on the conditioning, and it's based
Hmm.
on, the way that we've put together our prior experiences or
Yes,
whatever.
yeah.
But I would say, when people say, "Oh, I can't do that," it's like, well, what would it take for you to be able to?
Hmm.
Like what fear would you have to drop away? What belief is saying that right now?
Hmm.
And I think that us living out into our potential is something, it's our birthright, right?
Hmm.
Like we can
Hmm.
try to play by the rules. Probably we won't be very happy if we live into what it is that we are born and designed for in this
Hmm.
lifetime. I mean, it's not necessarily putting our feet up and there's nothing to engage with it.
Hmm.
But it's a very alive version of life.
And I like how you use the word unlock because that means it's there. It's the
Yes.
potential is there. You just have to access it and find a way. And I think that's perfectly true because we just it's kind of
Mm,
the different layers that's blocking it, and the view is not very clear. But once you unlock it and unblock it as well, then you have free access to it, and it changes your whole life in many ways.
totally. Yeah. And I think that in order for people to feel fully seen, they need to be with people who are really present. And one of the things that I love about the work that we're doing here is that we're also present for the skeptic because that's a part of self, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
skeptic is not a bad thing necessarily because the skeptic is what keeps us from drinking Kool-Aid and joining a cult and forgetting we have kids altogether,
Yes.
like just
Yeah.
going off and doing whatever, the
Yeah.
escapism that can happen.
Yeah.
So the skeptic helps to protect us against certain things, but I think also we have this we have this unlimited capacity. And so how do we work with all of those parts of ourselves
Hmm.
and know how to unlock that in a way that's safe, in a way that is tested, in a way that is, proven results with people who are successful, with people who don't lose track of themselves and of what reality is, but who have dipped into and live inside of the intuitive world now. Like that's a very
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
way to approach it, and that's really
Yeah, I
what we're
think
up
like
to.
role models are really important for that because when I see also
Yes.
people are successful, I don't see them as being happy. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking, well, what
exactly.
kind of role model are you? Like, yeah, you have the money, but it's not leading anywhere. So
Right.
it doesn't really work. But if you can kind of embody that again and have that combination of like, yes, I'm truly happy and I am successful, I mean,
Hmm.
that's true success to me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you approach the skeptics though? Because what as some people when you say mention spirituality and they just kind of maybe they're like, I'm not sure I want to go there, or they're afraid of it, or they don't know what kind of agenda there would be. So how would you approach them with Holon? How would you talk to them?
I mean, it's as simple as either people feel called by this message or not. So if they
Mhm.
want to come close enough that we can engage in that conversation,
Good
then,
point.
I mean, a lot of the times what I'm doing, because people won't often talk about that they have a skeptic, is just
Hmm.
surface it because I can feel and intuitively I know and the team can feel where that's present, right?
Hmm.
So, I often will tell people, look, I started off as an atheist.
Hmm.
I was an atheist as an undergraduate studying neurosciences, and I had a massive spiritual awakening. And everything that I'm believing, I've learned on the job. I've
Hmm.
learned by sitting with clients and watching. If I say this, because I didn't realize it until I was in my mid 20s, but I'm very, very intuitive and clairvoyant and have so many things going on in this way, right?
Good for you.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I started off in my first year of practice, I was a doctor of Chinese. Well, I wasn't, they didn't offer a doctorate, but I was a practitioner of Chinese medicine at that time and later got my doctorate. And I was working with complete strangers and getting full downloads on what was going on for them at a deep soul level. What was going, like why their back was hurting was because of this in their life. All of it was just
Hmm.
coming
Yes.
through,
Yes.
you know, and then laying on hands and putting my hands on people and they would get better. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Now, what do I do with these needles and all this training that I got, you know, but I was still working with all of it. But the science, the skeptic in me died hard. And, you know, to some extent, it's still unraveling itself a little bit. It's still releasing itself
Hmm.
because I want to always have firm footing in this world.
Hmm.
And so nothing that I'm asking people to do is moving away from a sense of firm footing. It may be moving away from the footing that they recognize, the toxic relationship, the career they hate, you know, those kind of
Hmm.
things.
Hmm. Yes.
But it's not to move away from practicality, and that our work and that this approach is what has served those highly extraordinarily successful people to have the true success, as you say, to be
Yeah.
happy,
Yeah.
right? And when I'm
Exactly.
raising my son, he's now 18, but I would just repeat it over and over again because he was very focused on being an entrepreneur. It's probably a little bit of a spirit in the home. A lot of my friends are on that wavelength, right?
Yeah.
And so he would say, I want to grow up and make a lot of money. And I'm like, and none of it matters unless you're happy.
Yeah.
Always happy first. Always,
Hmm.
always be happy. And if money
Hmm.
comes, that's great. You know, you can find your way towards whatever success you're looking for in a material world. And it
Hmm.
may not even be money. Not everybody's geared towards that. But for
Hmm.
him, it's happy, happy, happy first. And so I feel like that might have seeped in and I'm happy for
Good.
that.
Yes. Yes. I think also openness. I mean, I mean, I've gone through all those phases and states as well. As somebody who loves
Mm,
philosophy and like, you try atheism, you try this, you try that, like that kind of openness to all of these, and then see what works for you and what feels right. And so the one
right.
that feels right is different. That's again one spiritual view of things because that is again intuitively it feels right. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that also like is so important that what we do is not based on fear. This is based on a certain like conviction that we have
Yeah.
that drives us, or call it faith or whatever you want to call it. And that's so important. But you need to go through those phases. And I'm kind of like
Yeah.
wary of people who's just like who shun anybody who's an atheist. And it's like, no, you
Oh,
need
no.
the openness. You need to maybe experience the doubt too. Go through it and then see what comes afterwards.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think that it's so important that we honor that there are so many different paths, you know, and that
Exactly.
we are not on the right path. We're on the right path for us, maybe,
For
but it's
us,
not
yes,
the
that's right.
right path.
That's true.
I think that
Yeah.
if we get into that spiritual superiority, we're basically working in another layer or a different paradigm of ego. And we
Hmm.
don't have the right to know what is someone else's correct path. That's between them, their highest self, God, whatever the words are.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think something else that's really important for skeptics to know is that they don't have to believe in everything, right?
Yeah.
And that they can feel in their own body and learn to sift and feel like, is this a reaction? Maybe if somebody uses the word God in front of them, and
Hmm.
let's say that this particular person had a terrible religious upbringing and they feel
Hmm.
like God is this twisted thing and, you know,
Yeah.
that it's speaking of what they know in their body that they learned in church or
Hmm.
whatever. It's like, okay, how do we sift through that and how do we still be able to hear what the person is saying? And maybe
Hmm.
we can just call it divine intelligence or life force, right? Life force maybe that's the language. And so we can learn to translate so that we understand that we're actually all coming to the same thing, right? Like
Yeah,
even an
and that's the
atheist
point. It
might,
is actually the same thing. We just use different terms, and that's
it,
okay. And I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
whatever works. The different languages that we use, but essentially, they're pretty much the same thing.
You know, maybe an atheist that's saying that is interested in like the cycle of water and how it's working through. I'm just picking something environmental, right? How
Yes,
it's
sure.
working through certain marshes and how that's
Mhm.
interfacing with the bird population and the insect population and how that interfaces with toxins and you know all of that. So the atheist might still deeply care and understand so much of that, and somebody that has a spiritual context can say, oh yes, that's, like how do we have that part of the world live in harmony with God? Or how do we they can take it in that language. And if the atheist can then hear from the point of view of like the divine intelligence which is running, or maybe it's not even divine, the life force intelligence that's
Hmm.
running this entire
Hmm. Yes.
ecosystem, which has so many balances and nuances that it brings me a feeling of awe. But you
Hmm.
can ask that same person, do you believe in God or a higher power? And they say no, but that's okay because that's just that's their language or their lens, right? So I
Yes.
think when to go back to your question of how do I help people, it's like, look, I don't need anybody to believe what I believe.
Hmm.
And if you don't like my language, change it in your head if it makes it make more sense to you. And
Hmm.
I'm going to speak as though things are so. And if they don't feel like they're so for you, then say that. And I will thank you for
And,
telling
and and
me
that's
I
not
don't
the
like that.
aim, right? That's not the aim is to unlock your own potential and whatever
That's
that is, that's going to be
right.
different anyway, right? And
That's
so
right. It's
but there are certain things that we can see that you can prove that you have found. And I found the alpha waves and childhood trauma, the link between that, quite fascinating.
oh
And
yeah, for sure.
yeah, so what is it that you found here?
Yeah, I mean, just within the talk of alpha, so many people are driven towards alcohol, for instance, because
Mhm.
they have suppressed alpha.
That's right.
They're actually just trying to bring their alpha up, and we need alpha. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like
Mhm.
they're trying to reach for a vitamin in a way. They're
Mhm.
self-medicating
Mhm.
for a depletion of alpha in their
Mhm.
brain, and so we can raise alpha and see them come through some of those experiences and relationship to alcohol. We see alpha getting suppressed when people have got trauma that hasn't been resolved. It's
Right.
often the
Yes.
case, right? We
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
also get changes in alpha if there's head trauma, like physical
Mhm.
blunt trauma.
Mhm.
But just talking about kind of in the realm of everyday, ordinary life and what might be going on for folks. Yeah. And then if we bring people into alpha, they have an incredible capacity to feel in touch, be in touch with their own body. What a
Mhm. Mhm.
beautiful gift that is,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because a lot
Yes.
of the times we've been taught by the way we live or the way we think about our health to be disconnected. So being in touch with our body in such a way where it feels just delicious and it feels
Yeah.
so incredible to be there.
Yeah.
Alpha is also associated with meditation. And so a
Mhm.
lot of folks, they'll say, well, I just sit and I close my eyes and I meditate and I've had a meditation practice. And when they learn how to do alpha correctly in their brain, when their brain learns how to work with alpha,
Mhm.
then they
Mhm.
realize that they were just sitting, eyes closed, listening to their monkey mind, hoping it would be quiet,
Yeah.
versus
Exactly.
really knowing how to drop beneath the noise
Yeah.
and be inside of that state, that true
Mhm.
meditative state. So it's a
Mhm.
huge learning for some folks in that way. And then, like you said, the childhood traumas or the childhood memories. Alpha is a little bit kind of in the later part of childhood, maybe like 8 to 12 years old. But often
Mhm.
when people go into an alpha rich state, because we have alpha coming, it's kind of there all the time, even if it's almost in a minuscule amount. When we bring alpha up with the eyes closed, they might be able to process that much better. Definitely, people can process forgiveness work in that state
Mhm.
and make amends. And then we often also will combine alpha with theta waves at the same time. So again, we're
Mhm.
just asking for both of those waves to be beautiful, to be moving from one part of the brain to the other in a certain timing with a certain level of coherence. It's not like if you put in binaural beats and you hope that you're in a brain state.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
different thing.
Mhm.
But anyways, when we have alpha and theta going at the same time, that will absolutely just really help people to dump out the subconscious
Mhm.
and those earlier even childhood, like pre-verbal or pre-memory. A lot of people will say, I don't really remember anything till I was 5, 6, 7 years old. So it's hard to heal the
Mhm.
things that were
Mhm.
there. So
Mhm.
the alpha and theta mixed together is a foundational way that we get into that time period. And what's incredible about training alpha with neurofeedback therapy or alpha and theta together with neurofeedback therapy is that the memories that are had and the emotions that are experienced have a bit of anesthetic with them, so that
Mhm.
people aren't in a lot of pain.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah.
And so it's a way to get there. We're not using psychedelics, we're not using anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We're not using any medication. And people are able to move and navigate through those memories or through those feelings, the anger that they're working when they're moving through the forgiveness process,
Mhm.
and keep it in a way so that they're not past that pain threshold. And that's
Mhm.
a lot of the secret to the success of moving through things very quickly.
Yes.
We love moving through what would take decades in a traditional psychotherapeutic environment
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
getting that done in 5 days. That's like one of our favorite.
And you
And
have
creating programs before and after that help to really support and integrate the tee up and the integration for that. Mhm.
and you have 5-day retreats.
We do.
What happens there?
Yeah, so on the first day we start with measuring the EEG, the electrical information of the brain. And again, we're using the most advanced hardware, software technology. My colleague is brilliant at understanding the brain, not just in terms of pathology, but also potential, right?
Hmm.
Including intuitive gifts and potentials that are latent or are not
Hmm.
fully expressed. So we do all of that measurement, and I sit with people and drop in another level deeper about what it is that they're really wanting. And then over the course of the next several many days, we basically do a huge amount of neurofeedback therapy with some specific facilitated tools and approaches that bring people through kind of like dumping out so much of the contents. And the dumping out isn't even necessarily, not only can it be, is not only is it anesthetized, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be conscious.
Hmm.
Right. So if you could just lose baggage
Yeah.
and not even know what it was, but you just suddenly feel buoyant and light,
You feel
you know.
light. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Know that.
So yeah, so we move people through that along with some other really, really advanced science-backed and science-based, technology-based equipment to help them to recover, to integrate. We have amazing food. We have a chef that's on site. We work with only 3 people at a time.
Hmm.
And so between a Thursday and a Monday, we get massive, massive changes in people's neurology. And they have become in touch with and healed things that they didn't think were possible or they had
Hmm.
hoped that would just go away, but they that were always kind of dragging with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people leave feeling lighter, clearer, less reactive, more strategic, more
Hmm.
able to focus, more able to be present with their loved ones. And then often whatever it is that they came in that they were wanting to be addressed, sleep issues or
Hmm.
intuition or something like that, those have all had
Hmm.
big changes as
Hmm.
well. And then the changes grow in over time because
Yeah.
this is real brain learning. The
Hmm.
neurofeedback therapy is taking the information from the brain to a computer via sensors. So there's nothing going zapping into the wires that are
Hmm.
connected to someone's head. The information is going on and to the computer, and then the computer is giving either sights or sounds that tell the brain directly how it's doing. And the mind is like not able to put it together because the mind is perceiving at about a half of a second, about 500 milliseconds. And the brain is actually interfacing with the computer at about 40 milliseconds.
Hmm.
So much, much faster, roughly 10 times faster
Hmm.
than what we can perceive. So we're really letting our incredibly talented and capable brains be running the show rather than the mind trying to say what we should or
Hmm.
shouldn't be doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the brain learns a whole new way of being. And once it learns that, it always wants to go back. It wants to stay there.
Hmm.
Um,
Because you've created a pathway, right? So then that pathway, the more you use it, the stronger it gets too. So the
totally.
connections and I think just people who are like always on go 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 and they're trying to like do problem solving and they have issues and then when they relax they get the solution, right? So that's the importance of like again changing here your state of mind and just like something like relaxation will give you the answers you need. You're not wasting time when you're doing that. And
No,
it's actually the
right.
complete opposite. You are
That's right.
gaining time.
That's right. I mean, if we want to talk about wasting time, spending hours, weeks, years, and decades inside of non-strategic, non-useful, incremental movement versus having a broad perspective, dropping off sandbags, and then being able to take a step forward. What is 5 days? I mean, people could spend that, I don't know, drinking Mai Tais on a beach somewhere
Hmm.
and not think about it as a waste of time.
Hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
but this is such an investment into your entire rest of your life, how you perceive reality and how your own brain works. Uh,
Hmm.
to me, it's a totally worthwhile amount of time and investment. I mean, I'm such a believer, truly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's so much of the brain we don't know. I just recently read that there are certain like waves that are we don't know about, but that seem to connect people across the planet with each other. So the collective unconscious, if you like, and all of these. So
Hmm.
so these are things that we're still exploring. And that's what I love about science, of like the openness of also exploring things that feel uncomfortable to them. Like even with
Right.
quantum physics, where you have things interacting, entanglement, and so on. And you say, well, we don't have a logical explanation for it. We don't understand it, but we think it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that was what happened for me when I had that first spiritual awakening experience because I was so young. I was just turned 18
Mhm,
and I was so immersed in the neurosciences and really studying and believing if we could understand our neurotransmitters, we could understand reality. Right. So I
mhm.
was already a cosmonaut in my own way. I was already super
That's
interested in
awesome.
consciousness, but I was just such a an atheist and reductionist that I couldn't possibly perceive of this. But now, and the more that we learn in science, I think the people that have that true, uh, like the real roots of science are about that exploration. They're about knowing that we don't know and having to understand that we're going to build upon what it is the people before us have built, but that we know that we don't know. We don't know more of than what we do know. Just like the way
Mhm,
that the universe is represented, there is more non-matter than there is matter.
mhm.
It's that
Yeah,
kind of proportion, right? It's
yeah,
like stunning.
yes,
So yeah,
yeah.
there's entanglements there that have
Mhm,
been shown inside of quantum physics, and and I'm not an expert in it in the interface of this per se on the biochemical level or on a field effect level, the quantum level about the brain, but definitely we know and we work with it we work with that entanglement factor on the spiritual level and we
mhm,
work with it in to the point that we can using the technology that we do feel confident in using very safely in via helping with timing and coherence. So coherence is communication within the brain,
mhm,
but what we know is that, and we've seen this again and again, people with highly coherent brains often set the pendulum in the room. They
mhm,
fall into leadership roles where they're not pushing and look at me and hierarchy and power struggles. They're leading from a really beautiful and wise place because they themselves are coherent. And
mhm,
what ends up happening is that the brains, the hearts, we also can look at it in terms of heart rate variability. The hearts of the people around those people end up dropping into a more present place, and their sense of themselves gets a little more flexible, if nothing else, and they
And
have
they
more
can listen
peace.
to others. They
That's
can actually
right.
truly listen and connect with them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly. Instead of just listening to the voice in their head because it's spinning out,
Mhm,
right? It can be so noisy inside of someone's head
mhm.
that they can't ever listen.
Yeah, or when you're on the defensive and you think everything it could be a potential attack on you, and it's like, no,
That's right.
you just have to be completely relaxed and present, like you're saying. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm,
Yeah. So when we work through the neurology of someone and we can get them into that coherent state, they end up being a change agent. They end up being a different leader, a different parent, a different person walking through the
mhm,
world, and
mhm,
they inspire that in others. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things is, regardless of whether somebody ever has their brain worked with neurofeedback therapy, or regardless of what our shape or our path or our interests or strengths or, areas of improvement are, just understanding that we can be a change agent by being who we are,
mhm, mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that that's a huge motivating factor,
Mhm,
right? To
mhm,
to be able to work the depths, to be integrated inside of our joy, to be integrated inside of our sense of self or our sense of peace, our sense of clarity. It allows for us to then move through the world and be that gift that we wish to have, what we get to be the change that we wish to see in the world, right? To use
exactly.
the famous quote. Mhm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Amy Albright. You're the CEO and co-founder of Holon, and much more as well. And thank you for such an enlightening discussion here. I just loved it. Thank you so much for being here in Arash's world.
Oh, thank you, Arash. It was so good to meet you. Such a fun conversation.
Thank you.